Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us on this last edition for the week of Inside the Papers, where we take a look at what is making headline news across in papers across the continent. And we are going to dive straight away into what the papers have for us this morning, beginning with the Daily Nation newspaper of Kenya, which writes in one of its top stories, Matiang'i hits again as Ruto fights back. The paper reports this morning that Deputy President William Ruto has hit back at Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i following his listing of properties that belonged to the second in command, which he said was a lifestyle audit conducted on him under the guise of sharing security details, pointing out that such a lifestyle audit should have involved other leaders for things to be okay. Moving over to Rwanda, the No Times writes, inside Rwanda CAR, no agricultural deal. The paper states this morning that the Minister of State at the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources has said the Memorandum of Understanding on Agricultural Cooperation between Rwanda and the Central African Republic, which was signed last week on Friday, offers a world of opportunities for peoples of both countries. Away from Rwanda, we are now in Malawi. The Nation newspaper writes in one of his top stories, MG1 storms Capitol Hill, civil service pay delay, ex-Chakwera. The paper reports that President Lazarus Chakwera on Thursday caused panic and anxiety when he made an impromptu visit to Capitol Hill, the seat of the Malawi government, to demand an explanation for delayed payment of civil servants' salaries. Moving over to Uganda, Daily Monitor writes, government halts a no COVID test rule on travelers. The paper makes us to understand this morning that an interministerial committee has postponed for 2 weeks the compulsory COVID-19 testing of all incoming travelers, including citizens, that was expected to start today as cases soar in on some other countries. Daily Guide Network, that's in Ghana, writes a demo over a Lubo border closure. The paper reports that concerned youth in the Jomoro municipality have petitioned President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo to, as a matter of urgency, reopen land borders in the country. Away from Ghana, we are now in Nigeria, in Liberia, beg your pardon. Daily Observer writes, be brief, committed, determined. Tomorrow belongs to you. President Sirleaf women political aspirants. The people write this morning that Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, former president of Liberia, has said women across the world stand a good chance of political leadership if they prepare themselves for the competition with their male counterparts and come together to support each other during political processes. Moving over to Nigeria, the Punch newspaper writes, FG's three-year deficit hits 15.4 trillion naira. Naira now, where the paper writes that within the 3-year period covering July 2018 to June 2021, the federal government recorded a fiscal deficit of 15.35 trillion naira. Statistics obtained from the budget office of the federation have shown. Away from Nigeria, we are now in Namibia. New Era writes, only 21.7% of healthcare workers vaccinated. Now, the paper states this morning that Minister of Health and Social Services Dr. Kalumbi Shangula has said the ministry will increase its efforts to convince all healthcare workers to get vaccinated because vaccination works. Over to South Africa Business Day, right, all Discovery staff will have to get jabs. Now, the paper reports that Discovery has become the first JSE-listed company to announce mandatory COVID-19 vaccinations for all staff, a move that may fuel a debate over about whether other companies should follow a growing international trend. Lusaka Times, that's in Zambia, writes, decision by UPND to petition all parliamentary seats held by the PF makes a sad reading. The paper reports this morning that the National Democratic Congress NDC faction has said that it is deeply saddened with the United Party for National Development UPND's decision to petition all parliamentary seats held by the Patriotic Front. And our last paper for the day is Newsday, that's in Zimbabwe, which writes Zim sinking in Chinese debt. That is according to the ED. Now, the president, Emerson Mnangagwa, admitted on Wednesday that Zimbabwe is choking under Chinese debt, but said the Southern African country would continue looking up to the Asian giant for bailout because of the good working relations between the two nations. Now, that's what a cross-section of papers across the continent are telling us this morning. Now, we are going to look at these stories in greater detail Accompanying us this morning is Good News Kadogan, joining us all the way via Zoom from South Africa. He is a Pan-African coach. Hello, sir, and thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Hi, Laurentia, and good day to your listeners across the world.
Thank you so much. And now let's get straight away into what the papers are saying. We begin with Daily Nation, of course. That's a paper in Kenya, which talks about President William Ruto. It was reported yesterday that William Ruto has over 300 security officers guarding him. Now, the president has actually hit back on the cabinet secretary in the person of Fred Matiang'i that this move was carried out under the guise of it's a lifestyle audit that was carried out under some other guise, and he says if this should be carried out on him, it should be carried out on other government officials. So what can you say about the deputy president's concern?
Sure, it is a big challenge for leadership because in general, politicians across the world seem to be honest people. So in this case, though the Secretary of Parliament is raising this from a security point of view, that what he is saying is for real. He is doing the expose just to report on the security provisions. And then on the other hand, it's important for a deputy president of a country to open themselves up for scrutiny. Because if then he wants to keep private his life whilst he is a public servant, it doesn't really add up. So at the end of the day, everybody who takes up a position to be a public leader should be prepared to share their life with the public that they lead.
Okay, yeah, let's move over to Rwanda. Looking at the New Times, it's talking about an agricultural deal that was signed between Rwanda and the Central African Republic, and they're going to explore land in the Central African Republic. What can you say about this deal between Rwanda and the Central African Republic, and how beneficial is it going to be for both countries?
It's very interesting for me from where I sit because it shows that the agreements that are signed on the African continent, especially the main one around the AFC, FTA, around trade and cooperation on the continent is coming alive through this. Food security is important, and I think this is good news for Africa. Yes, I'm using that pun deliberately.
All right, okay, thank you so much, Genius. Let's carry on now with the Nation newspaper of Malawi. It's talking about President Lazarus Chakwera's visit to Capitol Hill. That is the seat of Malawi's government. He went over there to demand why civil servants' salaries have been delayed. What can you say about this? It seems to be some kind of norm for African countries where civil servants have their salaries delayed, and a president reacting in such a manner. What lesson goes out to other African states?
I think the lessons here are for leadership. I love presidents who get involved in the lower levels where actually operation is actually happening. So the president here, as he referred to as MG1, really has outdone himself. And I think he is a shining light for all presidents to be involved in the operations of their country. But also, on the other hand, I think the civil service is supposed to be ready all the time. It should never be a surprise when a president walks into an environment or a capital kind of complex like Capitol Hill in Lilongwe.
Okay, Daily Monitor, that's in Uganda. It talks about COVID-19, that the government has halted the rule of having travelers getting into the country vaccinated against COVID-19. And this comes as the cases, number of infected persons of this pandemic is soaring in other countries. Do you think this is a good move by the Ugandan government, and how is it going to affect the citizens of Uganda?
There's a lot of stuff that is happening across the world with regard to government control. And there's an oscillation between relaxation of rules and also control on the other hand. And usually the relaxation of the rules is influenced by trade and economic factors,
For sure.
because people are suffering economically. But then it's also about the lives. The controls are in there to make sure that governments can save lives of people. So it's a kind of a wire walk for leaders across the world, and especially here, to actually make sure that there is a healthy balance between the relaxation of the rules and the imposition of controls to ensure that governments can actually contain this pandemic so that it does not result in unnecessary loss of life. Whilst on the other hand, it does not totally shut down the economy such
For
that
sure.
people die from poverty and other
For hunger.
related kind of constraints.
Okay, now let's step into West Africa, moving away from East Africa. First off, we'll be in Ghana with Delegate Network, and it's talking about youth demonstrating that the border be opened. And according to this youth, this prolonged closure of land borders has caused businesses to collapse because our businesses in the border towns were rooted in these closed borders. What can you say about these demands from the youths? Is it valid or not?
I think here is the same as the other considerations that I mentioned a minute ago. So at the end of the day, you'll find that young people are much more agile. They do business across different countries, and the physical environment is not even constrained at times. So they are the ones who then are at the receiving end of these controls. And I think it has to be listened to in terms of their protests, so that in the end, there is again a healthy balance between control and trade facilitation.
All right, we are now in Liberia with Daily Observer. Former Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is calling on women to be more active in politics. She says, be brave, committed, determined. Tomorrow belongs to you. That is President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, former Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, telling women and political aspirants. What can you say about this call by the former Liberian president?
I agree with her. It's actually today belongs to women, not tomorrow. So there has to be a kind of a push that opens up all forms of leadership, whether it's in the public sector, in the private sector, in the non-profit sector, or the cooperative sector. Women have to lead because I believe that they have got more to offer than men. Yeah, it has been proven in research across the world, especially in America, that when you bring women into businesses, they actually multiply the return on investment.
Okay, but
I'm
when
sure
you look
in politics, it will be the same.
Okay, when you look at the context in Africa, would you say women have been a little relegated as concerns business and politics, and what can be done about that?
It has to be opened up. I think the men must lead the process of opening up the way for women, because patriarchy has held women back quite a lot. And the men who are in control, I'm including myself here, are actually a part of the problem. If you don't have you don't have men who sponsor and who mentor and open the way for women to succeed in all these pillars of leadership in society, it means then it's going to continue like this. And I don't think those who have got sisters and daughters and wives whom they want to actually succeed can support a situation whereby the past continues into the future.
Okay, yeah, we leave Liberia to move over to Nigeria, and looking at the Punch newspaper, it says federal government's three-year deficit hits 15.4 trillion naira now within a three-year period covering July 2018 to June 2021. The federal government recorded fiscal deficit of 15.35 trillion naira. Now, the paper explains to us what fiscal deficit is, and it says it is a shortfall in a government's income compared with its spending. What explains such a deficit for the Nigerian government?
There's a number of factors that affect economic performance, as is expressed in this number of 15.4 trillion naira. And one of them is the difference between what you buy from outside and what you export. And also, internally, as they say, it's about comparing what you spend as government and what you earn as an income. Mm-hmm. And the main source of income for government is tax. So if they are not collecting enough tax to pay for government expenditure, it means then they have to borrow. And then it becomes a downward spiral of an economic situation that cannot be salvaged.
All right, we now step down to the southern part of the continent. We begin with No Era, and it talks of the COVID-19 vaccines, and it says only 21%, 21.7% of healthcare workers have been vaccinated. Now, we know ever since these vaccines were introduced, most African states or Africans are scared of getting vaccinated against the coronavirus pandemic. Now, when we have those who are in the healthcare not willing to be vaccinated, what message goes out to the citizens?
We mere mortals are going to struggle to accept that the science is correct. The health practitioners have to lead by example. If there was 100% acceptance of the vaccine by the health professionals, mm-hmm. it for us mere mortals to actually accept that the vaccination program is one of the major tools that can help nations across the continent to actually fight this pandemic. I think there should be a very strong kind of message sent to the health practitioners mm-hmm. To actually get them to have a higher number in terms of the uptake, because that number will influence the uptake across each nation.
Okay. Now, where we are moving over to South Africa, and we're still looking at this COVID-19 vaccine, and it's talking about vaccination being compulsory for some companies, starting with Discovery. And it says Discovery has become the first JSE-listed company to announce mandatory COVID-19 vaccinations for all staff. Now, do you think it should be an obligatory act to, obligatory something to get vaccinated against the coronavirus?
I find myself conflicted here because of what I've just said a minute ago. Mm-hmm. But I think, like Chimamanda Ngozi from Nigeria says, the danger of a single story. To actually have only one view of things, it doesn't actually help.
That's true.
The kind of dilemma that Discovery faces here is that of a stretch between personal freedom, mm-hmm. Which is now the personal freedom of the employees that work for Discovery on the one hand, and also the factors that I raised earlier on of actually having to ensure that they lead by example as a health provider. So at the end of the day, there needs to be a balance here. Mm-hmm. Leading by example on the one hand, and also respecting the rights of each employee.
Okay. Okay, we are now in Zambia. We are talking politics this time around. Lusaka Times, it says, decision by UPND to petition all parliamentary seats held by the PF makes SAT reading. Now, the paper goes on to say the National Democratic Congress faction has said that it is deeply saddened with the United Party for National Development decision to petition all parliamentary seats held by the Patriotic Front. Now, what does this mean for the political sphere in Zambia and for this new administration?
It's about being able to lead in a complex situation. And politicians that are used to lead in a either black or white kind of situation where there is no gray in between will struggle with what they are seeing here in Zambia today. And that is a factor of maturity as well. I don't mean maturity from adult, I mean from child to adult, but a maturity of leadership to say are we able to, as politicians, to deal with issues that are not clear-cut, whereby now the composition of parliament is no longer a one-party kind of situation. It's a situation whereby there's a mixture, there's complexity, and to exercise that maturity or to display it, they'll have to show that they are able to deal with that complexity.
Okay, let's conclude with Newsday Zimbabwe, and it's talking about President Emerson Mnangagwa admitting that his country is actually choking under Chinese debt, but he further says they are going to continue keeping their relationship in with this Asian country because they have to promote good relations. What does this explain? Do African countries have to keep dwelling on aid from these other countries or from foreign nations?
Another paradox again, and I think today our papers are actually presenting these paradoxes to us as readers. And here the paradox is between self-determination on the one hand as a nation for Zimbabwe, and also on the other hand, domination by the Chinese on the African continent. There is nothing wrong with bilateral cooperation between two nations. But when that cooperation is one-sided and favors one country over another, then it's no longer cooperation, but it's domination of one by another.
That's true.
And it takes us back into the whole narrative of slavery and colonization. Because if now there is economic colonization and economic slavery in modern time, it means then Africa is not free.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Good News Cadogan, for taking our time to be with us this day and taking a deeper look at what the papers are telling us this morning. Thank you so much for your time and hoping to have you in subsequent editions of the program.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate. Yes. Thanks a lot.
Okay, and do have a nice day. Thank you so much, televiewers, for being with us this day on Inside the Papers. We shall be looking at what is making news in the papers come Monday at the same time, 10 hours, 30 minutes GMT. Do not miss out on that for us to bring to you what is making headline news in the papers across the continent. Until then, you have a wonderful weekend in the company of programs on Africa Media.